Sup shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to NSP Reviews, where today we have ourselves 7 tracks off of an album titled Best Songs Volume 1 by Ellis Hadlock Music. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves the album on the screen here, Best Songs Volume 1. We're going to listen through again from Light on Petals to Place of Serenity from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go, starting with Light on Petals. I'm not sure what this video function is, whether it's a music video for the track, but I won't play with that in case I break it or something like that. We've got lovely pan flutes with the plucks on the side there. A sub-bass resonance there, that's kind of beautiful. I mean, I've been reviewing Ellis Hadlock's music for a while now. I'm assuming Best Songs Volume 1 is potentially like music off of his 15 albums, like the best ones, his favorite ones potentially, you know? I mean, it is wonderful music. The piano melodies we have alongside the strings. There's a wonderful array of different instruments here, providing a really satisfying, calming tone to it. These are typically instrumentals, although I think there's been vocals occasionally in some of these tracks. Instant development there, harmonizing on top, it's great. You know, where we're clearly understanding where we need to build tracks and let them flourish. With some choir chants in the background as well, just to add a little bit of mid-range there and that sort of ethereal kind of element to it. I can only assume the Light on Petals would be about the sunrise. But it is incredibly soothing music. I would thoroughly recommend this to anyone looking to get into sort of tunes that will just kind of allow you to just find peace within your daily schedule. You know, it's wonderful. Wonderful stuff. Just the lead element here, the pan flute, there's enough variation with the melodies, the way it's being played, the tone of it is interesting. It's unpredictable. But it makes sense from a compositional arrangement perspective, a theory standpoint. You know, there's no weird notes or resonances or anything like that. Again, there's so much space with these synth or bass parts in the low end there. And if the tone of the bass itself would be kind of ominous, I think the other instruments balance it out in a way that makes it more sweet and approachable. There's some sus2 or sus4 harmonies in here. We've got potentially major or minor tonalities infused here within. Very little in regards to extensions harmonically, but that's fine. Free-flowing rhythms. It's great. But that was Light on Petals. Light on Petals. Number 1 with Palette's Blend, number 2. So these must be videos. It's all right. I don't want to break it. We'll have a look at this. When we get to Place of Serenity, we'll have a look at that video then just to test how that works. Because I'm curious, because if you've got videos on Bandcamp now. That's dope. That's not something they had before, as far as I was aware. It's great to see them continuing to improve the website. Video is such a powerful medium nowadays. Lovely vibrato. They sound like they're actually being played. And I'm sure that they are being recorded, you know. Although the plugin technology is also so incredible nowadays, they can simulate that, you know. They can simulate the warbling or vibrato of woodwind instruments. It's incredible. And don't even get me started on guitar or bass lines or string elements. It's incredible stuff. It's very difficult to tell anymore, you know. Similar flute element to what we had previously there, so we're obviously a fan of those elements when we write these instrumentals. I mean, it'll be really interesting to see how Ellis makes their music, you know. How do they produce it? Because it's commercial grade, like the studio production is sensational, you know. Like, I like the filtering and EQing of the various instruments here. There's no weird resonances from any of the elements of the mix. There's tension in the harmonies here, some counter melodies going on. I don't think they're directly call and response or mirroring them. Which I assume is the whole point of the palette blend. You know, you've got one tone and one style and you're kind of warping them together, potentially going polyrhythmic or polymeter, you know, polytonal. I mean, I adore this. I think that even if it's not discordant, but even if there's a little bit of aural confusion here going on with some of these individual composites and how they communicate, that again is the concept of the song palette blend. It's true to form. The choir parts, they balance it out very well. And there's phenomenal dynamic range to it as well. I'm not really saying a lot simply because I feel that the music speaks for itself here. There are core melodies and concepts that Ellis has instantiated here that are repeated throughout there with occasional choir motifs or builds there that have a form like a bell curve of intensity. Although this end part is, yeah, there we go. So that was interesting there. I'm wondering what that one was communicating aside from simply combining different ideas together to form an overall arc. That may have just been the concept. We've got Touch the Sunlight now, track number 3. I think the combination of these interestingly reverb-soaked piano parts with the strings as a sub-layer is an interesting choice here. A little bit more resonance in some of those mid-ranges for the piano, but it suits, it's fine, don't get me wrong, I'm enjoying listening to it. And the really sad sounding strings here. Alongside the interestingly filtered piano parts here playing a very somber melody. Great sense of space to it. It's very grandiose. Or at least it's got a sense of dimensionality to it. I like how we're alternating between the piano and the violin parts. I think that touch the sunlight. There are different ways that the sunlight touches things. To have different voices within that, calling out for that caress is kind of beautiful. Like, it's made me feel really sort of like soothed. It's really soothing. I feel really sort of like relaxed at the moment. Like, I'm probably going to take a nap after this simply because I feel like I could probably have like a good snooze. Just because it kind of alleviates any sort of like, negative emotions that you feel. I think that's something that a lot of music I listen to is the alleviation. And a lot of music encourages intense emotions, but it doesn't necessarily encourage relief from that. And it's a shame. I feel like there's an untapped market for that. There's not just, and no shade to rain sounds, on Spotify, but there's music that can do that too, and I think it should be respected and appreciated and heard. I like the fact we're kind of using that violin down that lower range and shifting at the halfway point to that higher one just to continue to extend the output and the relevance of the solo voice. We've got kind of, again, the piano and the violin coming together at the end there as if they have interlocked. Kind of like the violin is someone coming up from the earth to touch the sun, and the sun all around us is kind of, we finally got that connection. Wonderful, really great stuff. But we've got Ripcord, track number 4. Interesting choice here. The piano is mixed differently, and I'm not sure whether I like the tone before or this one. This track sounds quieter to me. And the violin sound, I think, was stronger in the previous track there. But the guitar arpeggio is so gentle with some extensions there in that harmony, some 6th or 7ths. Or even some flat seconds or some sort of diminished parts going. Not diminished, but maybe even some augmentations of those chord shapes. Now, saxophone would be a fun instrument to play. I've always wanted to learn the saxophone. Oh, the trumpet? Is that a trumpet? It's just a shame that saxophones are so expensive. Like, there's like $1,000 New Zealand dollars, like minimum for like a semi-decent entry-level one. And obviously they go up from there. And I'd love to play the saxophone. And apparently it's actually relatively accessible, you know. I made the mistake of trying to learn the violin after all the instruments I've learned, and oh, there's an interesting chord change here. But yeah, violin's very difficult. But I'll stick at it. Have we got multiple brass voicings here? I mean, if this is his previous works across the different albums, there's potential for there to be different qualities of the sound of it, or the way it's produced, or recorded, or mixed and mastered, you know, so that's fine. It's interesting, because I don't actually think we had that many dedicated chordal parts at all. It was broken as RIP chords, as if we weren't going to have them there, you know. The chords are ripped apart into their various notes. I think that's actually a clever title. The constant arpeggios and broken chord eighth notes were fantastic to listen along to, and I think the brass on top was a nice icing on the cake. But that was track number 4. We have number 5, Convergent Currents. Ah, yes, having water sounds. I enjoy when people put Foley into their songs, because it just helps to set the mood a bit more intently, you know? Interesting to have a bit more consistent with that bass line alongside the little tappy taps there going on the hand drums. Kind of reminds me of some of the music I've heard from Stardew Valley, which is like an indie game. Stardew Valley is a wonderful game. This music kind of reminds me of like one of the summer seasons or something like that, or like, yeah, summer. As I've said it before and I'll say it again, if Ellis Hadlock is not making music for video games or for indie devs, or not getting involved in that kind of stuff, I'm pretty sure there's money to be made there. I'm pretty sure there are developers who would love to have people like Ellis Hadlock in line to write music for their games, because it's wonderful stuff. Really suits an background ambient vibe, you know? I'm a little bit less convinced on what we have here in regards to the piano and sort of pan flute parts, or the sort of woodwind parts, and how they're combining. There's occasional unison between them. You know, convergent currents, I suppose just the two of them kind of intermingling with each other, you know, musically. Like kind of like how we have with palettes blends, you know. Oh, that was a really kind of sudden finish. It might have been cool to have had like repeaters kind of carry that over, just so that it wasn't so blunt with the finish there. But aside from that, it's fine, you know. Can't believe they've made 15 albums. That is wild, dude. Incredibly prolific, you know. And that general fade out there. I mean, it was it was a very pleasant, inoffensive tune there. I don't know if it was as defined in the direction as some of the previous tracks were, like light on pedals and palette blend and even ripcord. But we got Love to the Light though. I still enjoyed Convergent Currents, but Love to the Light, track number 6 for today. The longest one on the list so far. Interesting use of the electric keys. I kind of like the inference they're providing there with those, with the mid-range resonance. It's very soothing. Kind of reminds me of R&B and soul from like kind of 90s, you know? I wasn't expecting, I mean like the keys infer the love. And I think the light is kind of more of an indication of like, maybe the sun. Like how we would touch the sunlight. That could just be something that Ellis is having throughout his pieces, to have the violin as that sun, that source of light. I mean, the sub-layer strings there, or the synths that we have there, are a nice fluctuating touch there. And again, the dynamic range of that piano is fantastic. I do prefer the way this is mixed, actually, to the piano we had at one point, where it was like very kind of filtered over and kind of, maybe the mistiness was a deliberate thing, but yeah. The clarity within the mix here makes sense with a lot of the other elements we have within the arrangement. Higher end woodwinds. Yeah, a return to some of the... We love our woodwind leads in this. Great, some pedal note piano parts. I wonder what the music is trying to say in this one, aside from what the title is inferring. Is it literally just left up to the listener's interpretation? The reverse take guitars. I can't figure out if that's like actually a guitar, if they've got a synthesizer that sounds like a guitar and they're kind of working with the envelope to kind of smooth it out. I mean, it does sound like you're being hugged by music, to be fair. The warmth and the smoothness of those synths, the pads there, how they kind of go around the headphones there, sound like you're surrounded in that warmth. A little more active there to finish off, kind of saunter away, nice. And then we have Places of Serenity here, track number 5. Or track number 7, should I say, the last track for today. Yeah, I'm not sure about Love to the Light. Not sure how I felt about that one. I think that there was definitely some room to sort of, for room for interpretation there. There was some interesting tones there, melodically. It was definitely a soundscape that you sort of like, you're either going to get lost into if you're passive about it. That you can kind of like do stuff alongside passive listening, or if you're actively listening to it, you can kind of like close your eyes and just kind of simmer along to. We got Place of Serenity here, track number 7 today. Oh, we're going to try the video, right? Yeah, we're going to try the video today. Will it go? It won't go full screen. I'm trying to click it. It won't go full screen, so that's okay. We tried. We tried to make it full screen. I mean, like some of it sounds serene. Some of it also sounds kind of a bit murky, not like texturally, but as if the melodies are taken to someplace a little bit uncertain, with some of those darker tones and those triads, and with the bass resonance we have down there, I mean, it's nice to have that groove there, the hand drums, or the other kind of melodic percussion we have there. Because that's the thing, I think a lot of these tracks, some of them are missing a sense of groove with the percussion, and I think part of that's what allowed me to enjoy the earlier ones, because there was more of that. It's okay to have like an airy kind of misty sound to your tone, but even having like a little bit of kind of harder kind of sounds in there, more punchy bits, can just add a nice bit of textural contrast. Incredibly sort of unsettling with the synth textures. It's very different to what we've had previously here. This is kind of a more experimental piece, I feel, from Ellis. It does kind of sound like we're going into space. And there's some really, this kind of synth could have some really cool EDM-ish, kind of harder EDM-ish applications. So I'm kind of curious about how we got that sound there, but I suppose we're just kind of walking away from that now, aren't we? I like the fact that we're kind of doing a cooler response between the lighter textures to the more sort of mid, low, and heavy here. Because it is like a bass pad, I suppose, with that pad in the middle kind of providing a bridge between them. Oh, and at the same time now, okay. Ooh, a bit more of the build there. Dynamic range and tension there. Yeah, I'm not sure if that was a place of serenity or not. Maybe the serenity was kind of contingent on there being peace outside of that. Whereas to illustrate the contrast between the stressful outside versus the inside, where there is that solace, But yeah, that was basically Place of Serenity. And this is my conclusion of my review of Best Songs Volume 1 by Ellis Hadlock Music. I genuinely feel that this album, through, Light on Petals, Palette Blend, Touch the Sunlight, Ripcord, Convergent Currents, Love to the Light, and Place of Serenity amongst others, does show the best assets, of what Ellis Hadlock is all about. Clearly, we have a musician here who is experienced in regards to, composing music, working with different instruments there, whether they're recorded or they're used via plugins or samplers or whatever. We have a clear direction that we want to take with each track, a motif that we have for the most part stuck alongside. Even if you're not quite sure it's what the title says, that is up for debate because music is subjective, especially when it's instrumental. But at the same time, we have someone who understands the music theory and composition to a T, and they've created these songs over the course of 15 albums, right? 15 to 17 releases. And I'm proud of Ellis for what we've managed to put here. It's very rare I get to have a musician, with their best songs. They've got that many that these are the tippity tops. I could understand how the vast amount of the tracks could have compared to their, title aside from Place of Serenity there. Maybe the serenity was not as it seemed there. Maybe it was kind of, those low synths, those ones sounded just a little bit too intense, especially with the load of bass resonance here, especially with what we've had put forward with previous tracks where we would talk about, ironically, Touch the Sunlight, Light on Petals, etc. Those tracks were more calming than a song about Place of Serenity. Maybe it was the challenge of journey to get there, but that's basically the only gripe I have. Otherwise, I think that, again, I enjoyed Place of Serenity. And there were no tracks here that I was kind of like haphazardly, flagrantly ambivalent about. Maybe aside from Love to the Light, I couldn't really get a feel or a grip for the direction on that. There were obviously notes performing different functions there. And I could understand, the different elements there individually, and they followed along to what we wanted from music theory and composition perspectives there. The fundamentals were adhered to, but it was almost like, Love to the Light. I was expecting a journey there, and maybe there was one, but I didn't really quite hear it that clearly. Maybe that's just something I need on a secondary listen. Maybe I got too sort of deep into it and lost track of the journey for what it was. But ultimately, I think for the most part, I really enjoyed these tracks here. We had lots of interesting sounds from different synthesizers, woodwind instruments like pamphlets and stuff like that, brass instruments like a saxophone or a trumpet or something like that. Obviously bass synths and other pad elements here, as well as some leads occasionally. Some interesting sort of guitar tones or some reverse takes or some arpeggiated kind of parts. It's wonderful, When we committed to concepts like Ripcord, which had lots of harmonies that were arpeggiated, palette blend, different concepts that kind of melded together, as well as with Convergent Currents, Light on Petals, which kind of sounded like a sunrise, with the different sort of motifs there. Tonally, emotionally, performatively, the tracks match the titles, and you got a good sense for what it was, and they were enjoyable. I liked how we managed the individual harmonies and melodies within the tracks. We didn't just have everything coming at once for the most part. We allowed things to slowly kind of layer themselves, and we made the most of the 3 to 5 minutes that we had with most of these tracks here. Ripcord was a more simple concept, I think, in part because of the fact that it was made up of those broken chords. So we had different elements within unison there. We had some more sort of rhythmic and groove nuance there, with occasional percussive parts in some of these tracks, and I appreciated when they came in. They added a great sense of movement in there that was there with the strings and the brass and stuff, don't get me wrong. It's just it was more defined, and I enjoyed songs when they didn't have the percussion because of the opposite. It was more floaty and sort of more ambivalent It's just basically having contrast and having them sometimes and not overextending or having too much of a good thing. And I think for the most part with Ellis Hadlock with Best of Songs Volume 1, I understand why they're the best songs. I think these are the ones that Ellis Hadlock is extremely happy with. Of course, not all the tracks had similar sounding instruments, and I wasn't particularly sort of convinced that some piano tones suited those tracks better than other ones. I found sort of like patterns with how they sounded and found sort of tones I preferred, and some of the brighter sounding elements just sounded a little bit more sort of like our commercial grade than others. But this is also going over the journey that Ellis Hadlock has had, where they've continued to develop their craft, and it's no wonder that there is change between the tracks. Those are the masters of those, so it's okay that some are quieter and some that are not. And also, you don't have to use the same instrument all the time. I'm just pedantic and kind of greedy, I like things the way I like it. But this isn't about me. This is about Ellis Hadlock's music, and for the most part, the different sort of like melodic or harmonic motifs there, the percussive grooves that elevated it there, they made sense to me. There was nice amounts of dynamic range within the performance itself. For the most part, I couldn't really tell they were recorded or sampled, which is great. There are a few parts where songs kind of had like a really blunt kind of break, which I thought would be nice to a bit more of a transitory thing, but that also comes down to the mixing and mastering, so that's absolutely fine. But in regards to, like what I mean by mixing and mastering is like there's studio effects you can use like reverb or delay to kind of help etch it over. And we clearly understand how they work. So in regards to the recording, mixing and mastering, the studio production, we smashed it. I'm really happy for the most part with how they sounded. Ripcord sounded a little bit quieter than the other ones, so I'm wondering if that was just a different project or we just had a different sort of setup for that. But like for the most part, the tracks were nice and loud without pumping, lots of dynamic range to them. The individual elements of each of the mixes was nicely filtered, and even in the parts where some of the pianos sounded a little bit sort of dull, not boring or like uninteresting, but what I mean is like they sound like they'd been filtered to allow space for another element of the mix and the frequency spectrum, and that makes sense. It helps to kind of blend things together. You can use filtering to kind of individualize things and keep them unique and sort of separated, and then if you just put a bit of room reverb over it, and it tends to help a couple of layers of light compression to kind of smooth it out, and then bam, you got yourselves a master track. There was nice and wide in the stereo field. There was lots going on in it. I enjoyed the tone of most instruments for the most part, and I think that there was nice blending of the elements in there, especially in tracks like Palette Blend and Convergent Currents, where it literally relied on the blending in order to serve the purpose of the song itself, from my understanding. I think that the sound quality of the tracks there in regards to the way they were recorded, the panning of stuff in the stereo field, the lack of resonant frequencies for the most part, aside from like a little bit too much low end in some of the parts of Place of Serenity, I think it was mostly commercial grade there, and that this stuff that people could use in like film scores or like game design and everything like that for like soundscapes for like stuff. There's lots of potential for music like this, and I really hope that Ellis Hadlock finds success with this album as well as all of his others, because this is effectively my review of Best Songs Volume 1. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show Ellis Hadlock some love via the various social medias and the Bandcamp page. Stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next review. Spider hands out.